Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Harambee Park Phase 4 community meeting. I'm Amy Linné, project manager from Boston Parks and Recreation, overseeing the project. So we do appreciate you joining us this evening. So we'll go through these initial slides quickly. Please know that this meeting is being recorded, and that way we'll post it to the project webpage, and that should take just about a week to be posted, and then we will share the link to that webpage in the chat in case you'd like to view this presentation again or share it with your neighbors who are unable to attend. Next slide, please. I think everyone's pretty comfortable with Zoom, so we just have a few tips there, and I think we can jump ahead to the agenda. So these are the items we'll be covering tonight. The project team introduction, project overview, a brief presentation, and then a listening and discussion session followed by closing remarks and next steps. Next slide. So once again, I'm Amy Linné, project manager from Boston Parks. I don't think Eric James, he was planning to join us, but I know he had another meeting as well. So he's a great resource for neighborhood concerns from the Office of Neighborhood Services. And then we have from our design team, which is Weston and Sampson, Amanda Gall, project manager, and Tong Yi Zong, landscape designer. So this is the third community meeting for phase 4 of the Harambee Park master plan. Tonight we'll be sharing the feedback we received on 2 potential features for future phases of the park, and that's a pump track and a dog park. So as you can see on the schedule, the timeline for gathering feedback on the pump track and dog park is separate from the design work being done on the cricket fields as part of phase 4. And we'll give you an update on that phase 4 concept plan as well. Next slide. So this diagram is covering the project approach, the items that go into public park design. So that's the community input that we receive at these meetings and through the survey, safety guidelines and regulations such as ADA, City of Boston priorities, and the Parks and Recreation goals. And next slide. And so the City of Boston priorities, expanding walkable access to parks, addressing equity, climate resilience, health, housing, and community building. Next slide. And then the Parks and Recreation goals, which include creating spaces that are accessible and available to all, that have a diverse, balanced, and efficient mix of uses that include meaningful and inclusive community engagement, that incorporate adaptive and resilient landscapes and promote connections. So with that, I will turn it over to Amanda Gall, project manager from Weston and Sampson.
All right. Hi, y'all. So I'll run through these next few slides pretty quickly just to recap the current design phase prior to getting into the dog park and pump track items. For those of you who have attended the first 2 meetings, this will seem familiar, but to those who haven't, we're currently working on the design for phase 4 from the master plan, which was established in 2015. Phase 1, 2, and 3 have been completed and include an inclusive playground, soccer fields, football fields, perimeter paths, and an internal pathway system. And the current phase, which is phase 4, which is highlighted below, includes the renovation of the existing cricket field and the relocation of a second cricket field that was demoed during phase 3 for the football fields. The future phases will include baseball fields, basketball courts, a playground, tennis courts, a netball court, and a parking lot. Right, next slide. So looking a little closer up into what's happening in phase 4, the final design is not yet confirmed, but generally we'll be including 2 cricket fields. One will have sports lighting to play after dark. Both will have the bleacher seating and scoreboards. Also included in this phase is the continuation of the internal perimeter path with lighting. and a secondary path running north to south between the two fields to access the center path, which connects to the entire park. Also included is a small entry improvements at the junction of the two proposed paths along Westview Street and the entrance from the school at the end of the central pathway. We'll also be including trees and lawn restorations in the remaining areas. Next slide, please. So, moving on to the pump track and dog park feasibility study, we wanted to start by showing a map of where the surrounding dog parks and pump track are within the city limits. So you'll see the parks shown in purple are city-owned dog parks. The parks in the green teal color are existing dog parks not owned by the city. And the one park shown in red is the only other pump track within the city of Austin. So relative to the other locations, this area of the city does not have many dog parks or pump tracks in the vicinity. 3 dog parks are within a 10-minute driving distance, including Flaherty Playground, Downer Playground, and Ronan Park. And Garvey and South End Dog Park are within a 20-minute driving distance. The remaining parks are a bit further away. Additionally, the only pump track in Boston is located on the other side of the city, which makes Harambee Park a great location for either or both of the amenities we're talking about. Next slide, please. So looking at a few of the dog parks in the city, we have Di Filippo. I might have just butchered that name, but in the picture on the left, it's in the north end. It's about 8,300 square feet. Peters Park, which is in the south end at 14,000 square feet. And Ronan Park, which was just shown in the last slide as being within the 10-minute driving distance to Harambee. That one is 6,400 square feet. So you can see that they do vary in size and surfacing. Di Filippo is turf surfacing, while Ronan and Peters have the rice stone surfacing. And both kinds are designed to drain easy and to clean, the rice stone being a little bit more easier to clean than the turf. But we would also want to consider the amenities within the dog park, like the obstacle courses, access to water for both humans and dogs, disposal and maintenance options, and then seating as well. Next slide, please. So the pump track on the left is the one located in Alston at Smith Playground. It's roughly 8,400 square feet and designed for non-motorized bikes or skateboards. This is a very important note because the design of the hills and proximity of the next undulation is based strictly for human-powered equipment. The two on the right are a little larger, but still only allow non-motorized equipment. So overall, there are many different configurations for pump tracks that you can have. Ones that are more of like a run, like the two on the right, or one that is more open-ended and allows the user to have and make more decisions as they ride through the course, like the one at Smith Playground. Next slide, please. So generally, it is recommended that dog parks are a minimum of 10,000 square feet. It's not necessary, especially in some areas of the city, as you saw on the earlier slide. But for optimal running space, if available, that is what we would recommend. Also, other important features are that it's fenced in to contain the dogs and that it's relatively flat. So Harambee does check all of those boxes. In looking at sizing for a pump track, it's recommended that it's a minimum size of 5,000 square feet, but it does range to about 10,000 square feet for competition level tracks. So to get a better idea of the space, both the dog park and the pump track, to get a better idea of the space that both the dog park and the pump track will require. We wanted to compare it to the other features that you see in Harambee. So we have the cricket field, soccer field, football field, and baseball field, which are all generally a lot larger than both the dog park and the pump track, and all are within the master plan for Harambee. 3 of the 4 fields just mentioned have been built. So we can get a better idea of where we could fit in these smaller 2 amenities or 1 amenity. So you can go into the next slide, please. So at the last meeting, we had put together a survey to gauge the interest in having a dog park or a pump track in this vicinity. The survey was open between January and April of 2023, and we had a total of 33 responses. So some noteworthy items to highlight are that most reported that their main way of getting to the park is by foot. And the frequency in visits was generally split between visiting daily and going a few times a year, with varying frequencies in the remaining half of those respondents. So some folks are going to Harambee currently to walk or run, but there was also a lot of interest in the playground, the natural aesthetics of the park, social gatherings. And then can you go to the next slide? So when asked about their interest level in pump tracks, most or 33% of the respondents were pretty neutral. So they were fine either way. It's for bikers and skateboarders specifically. And it's just not that sure that it fits in the community or the current community. So then 24% of the respondents were highly interested in having a pump track. Some of the respondents reported saying it will give kids an additional place to play, and it may be useful for children learning to ride bikes or skateboards. The next level of interest was not interested at all. They don't have a bike, so it won't really affect them, or they would prefer a skate park instead of a pump track. And then some of the folks had somewhat of an interest. So they know that a lot of teens like to skate and bike, so it'd be cool to give them a place to do that. Some always wanted to live close to a pump track. And then those who were strongly opposed had safety concerns, specifically related to motorbikes on the track, which could be a problem. Next slide, please. So then when asked about the level of interest for dog parks, 40% were highly interested in it. They wanted it, they need it. They desperately need one in this area of the city. As we showed earlier on the slide, there's not really many in this area. And the number of dogs has increased dramatically in the past 5 to 6 years. There are no dog parks nearby, and dogs are plentiful in this neighborhood. Those that were somewhat interested reported saying that they could help maintain it. They're personally interested in building a grassroots community program to help maintain the dog park. The neutral ones were just not sure. It depends on where the location is. Other concerns were maintenance concerns. How are you going to enforce going to implementing keeping the areas cleaned up and safety of others? Very concerned about how this will be kept clean and safe. And then those who did not want it either did not own a dog, so they don't feel a need for it, or they have concerns about irresponsible dog owners. So there is a bit of responsibility that both the city and the users would have to take or accept when using a dog park. So next slide, please. So then when asked to rank your preference, the number 1 with a 3.07 score is a dog park. pump track was close by at 2.48, and then people who wanted both, there was about 2.4 score for that and a 2.09 for neither. And then in some of the open-ended responses, there were some other issues brought up regarding drainage of the football fields, and then maintenance and vehicle access. So there's a lot of broken glass and litter everywhere. And there's concerns about people driving on the field and trying to mitigate that. And then there was another comment for a desire for a track, which I'm assuming is a running track. So is there another? Oh, yeah. Okay. So then in reviewing all of those responses, we wanted to start looking at areas that where, a dog park could be potentially located within Harambee. So in area number 1 is between these two passive walkways and right north of the a walking ellipse. In area number 2, it would be further in the outfield of the baseball. It would be further, like too far away for the balls to really hit. And we could line that edge with shade trees to also help mitigate the fly balls. And then area number 3 would be nestled into this vegetated framed zone right off of the centrally accessible pathway and closer to the playground and courts. So zooming into these areas, option 1 is also a great spot because it'd be near the future parking, which will be proposed in phase 6. It's along accessible pathways and it's pretty separated from the active recreation field users. So option 2 is in the intersection of the accessible paths, and it's centrally located and away from the road, which is a little bit better for the animals who get scared by the loud road noises. And then option 3, it's surrounded by the shade trees, so it won't be in direct sunlight, is near accessible pathways, and it's also separated from the field users and the active recreation. So next slide. So then we started looking at areas for a pump track. We located the first spot in southwest corner near the entrance. And then the second would be a similar location to where the dog park would be, which would be at the intersection of the pathways by the baseball field. Next slide. And so looking closer at these two locations. So option 1 would be near the future parking lot again. It would be near the potential entry plaza that would occur during that phase. It's separated from the field users and it's also highly visible from the street. So any misuse of a pump track with motor vehicles would be stopped relatively quickly due to the high visibility of it there. And then option 2, it'd be near the accessible pathway. It's also centrally located amongst the active recreation since it is a more active recreation activity. It's also pretty open in the middle here as well. So there would be really great sight lines to it for security reasons. Next slide. So with all of that said, we just want to hear any additional comments, maybe what you guys have thought about, the responses to the survey and anything that was potentially missed or not spoken about. So I'll hand it back over to you guys.
Thanks, Amanda. And I just want to say thanks, Alize Cabral and Eric James from ONS for joining us. So we have a small group here this evening, but if anyone does want to comment or ask a question, we'd encourage you to. And I will put, I'll put the project webpage in the chat, as well as my email for anyone that doesn't have it. One more thing I'll say on the dog park and pump track. Part of this study that we did during this phase was really to sort of inform the future phases at Harambee. So that process will include another round of community engagement meetings and another opportunity to discuss it more. So this is just sort of a preliminary look at if those features are desirable and where they might go, but nothing's set in stone at this point. We're just giving that sort of just helping to kind of inform the future conversations about them. Looks like Eric has his hand raised.
Hi, hey everybody. Don't mind the background noise. I am on the way home. But I did have a question. One of my residents asked about the dog park, and whether or not that would include little baggies, disposable baggies for the dog waste. I know that one big issue that we've been experiencing in Dorchester and a little bit of Mattapan is definitely a lot of excessive dog waste in the area. So they were wondering how the dog park can lead to minimizing that.
Yeah, and Amanda, I don't know if you want to answer that, talk to this slide, but.
Yeah, so we would definitely recommend the doggy bags. It does help with the maintenance. There is also coordination that has to occur with the park maintenance and make sure that they have access to the disposal area of those doggy bags. But we would definitely recommend that. It promotes people to pick up after themselves.
Yeah, and I wonder if it might be worth even installing some in different areas of the park if we know that we're sort of attracting a greater population of dogs, and some people might be walking through the park to get to the dog park. Maybe that's something we can look at as well. I think we've definitely, anecdotally seen a lot of dogs being walked in the park, so we know they're out there, and so I'm sure even thinking about this something that could be park wide might be helpful. Thanks for that question, Eric. Well, if no one has any other questions or comments, we'll let everyone get on with their evening, but I would certainly encourage you to email me if anything else comes to mind, or if you have any other questions that you think of later. I'd be happy to discuss those in more detail. And I do appreciate you joining us this evening. And thanks to the design team for putting these slides together. And I hope everyone has a nice evening.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you all.
Thank you all.